Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of Hilaal Live. My name's Luqmaan Shadrach, all the way from the Cape Town studios. Thanks for watching us on channel 347, also on our live stream www.hilaal.tv. Now, we all know that South Africa led the way with taking the case to the ICJ hearings. But after the initial hearing and the ruling that was delivered, there were additional countries that thought best to also make their case heard as well. In fact, there were 10 countries that presented their arguments on the legal consequences of Israel's occupation of Palestine. And those 10 were obviously South Africa, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, the Netherlands, Bangladesh, and Belgium. Also, Belize, Bolivia, Brazil, and Chile also delivered their arguments as well. When the initial case was heard at the ICJ and the ruling was delivered, we had a couple of legal minds in studio to discuss this very important topic. But I thought let's invite Fay Nagia back and pick her brain on the last couple of rulings that were delivered at the ICJ. Well, not rulings, but cases that were taken to the ICJ. Fay, good evening. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Shukran, Luqmaan, for having me again.
My absolute pleasure. For those that don't know, Fay is an advocate and has a very strong advocate with regards to the case that the various countries have been taking to the ICJ. So Fay, obviously South Africa led the way. We were very impressed at the outcome that all the judges delivered in that case, and I think it set a definite precedent, and that is why the other countries have now decided to also put their best foot forward as well. But let's look at the various countries, right? And what were some of the arguments that they put forward? Was it very similar to ours? Did they have anything different to talk to the ICJ about?
So I think one of the distinctions we need to make here is that South Africa's case was a bit different. So there we sought specific judgment around and orders around a very narrow question of law. They stated their case very well. We got provisional measures, and also noting that it was an equivalent to our interim judgments, where you have an interim judgment and you'll have a main judgment subsequently, and that's what we're waiting for. When it comes to these particular matters, where it comes to requests for opinions from the ICJ, for example, that's a bit different. So that is non-binding. The advisory opinions are non-binding, but they also serve a very important purpose in international law. And I think especially in this particular juncture where we're at, and I think it's very strategic of these countries to do that, because what it does is it eliminates a lot of questions of law that might take time into a particular proceeding before the ICJ. Okay. So where we have a critical mass of countries coming forward with more or less similar questions of law before the ICJ, we can have some certainty and clarity around core issues which is facing Palestine today.
Right, correct. And I think this is the argument that all the countries collectively is trying to highlight, not just to the ICJ, but to the world. It's also a statement. It's also it's something that the world needs to sit up and recognize that what is happening right now is of the highest scale of concern. But even though with all these countries coming forward, there just seems to be a neglectful opinion on what is really happening from certain countries. What's your take on this?
You know, if you look at the various representations made by the countries, largely we see similar themes coming through. So we see themes of the history of the occupation. We see Israel being presented as a belligerent occupier. We also hear the differing views of countries like Israel, like the USA, like the UK. Israel, of course, very similar to its case that it had before the ICJ when it was against South Africa, really playing the victim in this respect. Talking about terrorism on the part of the Palestinians. I mean, even at this juncture, totally denying their role that they are playing in the massacres, in ethnic cleansing. So we see these prevailing themes, and I don't see how they're going to escape, any kind of decisive and clear call that they need to cease what they're doing. And this is actually an entire violation of human rights, international humanitarian law, international law. And that's what we're looking forward to in this particular advisory opinion.
Right. So we're going to open up the WhatsApp line if you would like to correspond with us. 079 085 2511. I just slipped my mind for a sec. 079 085 2511. That's the all-important WhatsApp number. You're welcome to call us and share your opinion with regards to all the other countries going to the ICJ. And letting them know how they feel about Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. Fay, with regards to so many countries coming forward all at once, this is what South Africa wanted. This is what we wanted other countries to also fight in the same battle that we find ourselves in as well. But surely this is an implication on international relations, not just between Israel and these countries, but the allies.
Absolutely. It's a most exciting time for international law. It's a pity that we needed devastation and that we needed this level of the loss of human lives, total ecological devastation to get people to stand up and say, we need to put an end to this occupation. It has taken us, it has taken all of that for us to get here. So I think it's a very monumental time for international law, and I'm hoping that those institutions set up to vanguard human rights, to vanguard peace and order, actually do the job they have been, that they purport to be set up to do.
Absolutely. The devastation has not stopped. If anything, it's heightened in certain areas as well. Even after South Africa has laid their case at the ICJ, even after the ICJ has given their ruling, even after many countries have gone and, put sanctions on Israel as well, the brutality has not stopped. Is there? Do you think there's any light at this end of this tunnel? I mean, what else do you think can be done?
I just want to point out what South Africa has done in this particular leg of the strategy to hold Israel to account and obviously to bring peace to the region and to ensure self-determination of the Palestinian people. So again, I haven't seen any other, although I must say that I haven't gone through each and every submission, but those that I've gone through, the way that South Africa first sets out beautifully, jurisdiction. So that puts to bed any kind of opposition that the particular court does not have jurisdiction, and this was raised by some of the allies of Israel.
Gotcha.
So quite detailed, very well put forth. And they also argued around issues of self-determination and then also condemnation of the settlement practices of Israel. What I found particularly interesting was that they called again for a ceasefire. So they called, whereas in the first round,
they didn't quite mention.
It wasn't decided upon by the ICJ. Here they're asking for an advisory opinion around the issue of the ceasefire. So that will also, because we hadn't really seen like a ratio with regard to why the court had rejected the ceasefire call in the previous round, this may actually bring to light what the court's reasons are for not calling for that. So that is the positive thing of actually including something like that in these particular rounds of submissions to the ICJ.
This is going to be very interesting times because I know Canada pulled out. They were initially part of all the other countries that was going to go to the ICJ, but Canada pulled out at the last minute. They were scheduled to appear, I think, in the week or 2 weeks ago. And for some reason they pulled out, which means that they obviously don't feel that they have a good enough case, or do you think that they are allies with Israel?
Look, if we look at what their policy statements have been historically, they have been aligned. US, Canada, UK, there's definitely an alignment there. I had, one would see some kind of substantive conscience in their statements, towards the end, where we could see that the violence had been escalating, the murders had been escalating. We'd seen a slight substantive shift in what they said in their statements. But alignment, one cannot deny.
Yeah, absolutely. We're chatting to Fay Nagia, Nagia, who is an advocate, and around the ICJ hearings, 10 other countries have submitted their cases to the ICJ. And if you'd like to correspond with us on the WhatsApp line 079 085 2511, that's the all-important number that you can WhatsApp only. Unfortunately, no telephone calls are allowed, and we'll read your message while this interview is happening. You are still watching Hilaal TV.